Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, September 24th, 2020. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. If it's Thursday, that can mean only one thing. Steve Wiltfong, Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports, checks in from the capital city of Indiana. Steve, how goes it?
Hey, good morning, Daniel. Goes well, man. I am going to see one of the top high school football games of the weekend, this coming weekend, which will include an Ohio State commit in that ball game. I'm going to see Cincinnati LaSalle and Buckeye safety commit Jalen Johnson take on Indianapolis Cathedral here in the Hoosier State. And it's been a beautiful week weather-wise, and we've been sending it down I-70 through Dayton on the way to Columbus daily.
It has been an extended celebration with the return of football. You have an excellent story up on the site now about how the Big Ten's return affects the recruiting cycle. Ohio State currently has the number 2 recruiting class, the Fighting Khakis, coming in at number 10. Those are your top 2 Big Ten teams. You talked to plenty of coaches for this piece. It is excellent. If everyone has not read it, they need to get over and do so right now. But let's talk about it. What was the general vibe that you got? Is the Big Ten back in the mix? And just how big of a calamity did they avoid by playing football?
Well, I think when you talk to a bunch of these guys, 2 things kind of stuck out for why they really wanted to play. First is a perception deal that other schools would be able to point to football being basically more important in their league and in their region of the country. And so when you're recruiting nationally, I don't know if I necessarily buy it, but that is certainly a concern that some of these programs had, and doesn't mean that there's not some validity to it. I'm not so sure. And then the second thing is just the fact that it's an unfair advantage for the teams playing compared to you. Not playing, one staffer in the Big Ten pointed to Clemson and Notre Dame doing a good job with their social media pregame, their pregame sideline passes and virtual tours and all of that they're doing on game day. That if you're not playing, you're not getting that opportunity to showcase that. And really, it's just another talking point with recruits. I mean, when you're talking the top targets so often, you kind of run out of stuff to talk about sometimes. So it's just another angle to present your product and also talk about different things. And then the third thing is obviously playing. If you're not playing, you're not able to say, hey, make sure you're watching our game. Make sure you're watching Pete Werner on Saturday. That's the position that we have you identified for. Make sure you got eyes on Pete Werner. That's exactly the way we see you running around in our defense. Well, if Pete Werner is sitting at home eating popcorn, watching college football, just the same as us, you can't watch Pete Werner. But now Ohio State can tell 2022 targets to watch Indianapolis native Pete Werner play for the Buckeyes, and so. Those are the reasons why it's big to play from a recruiting standpoint when you talk to people on that side of the fence. And yeah, I think that at the end of the day, when this is behind us and Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan are back to putting in over 100,000 people into their stadiums, anything that was perception based on football is more important in this part of the country, I don't see that being anything that's going to have any ramifications. But maybe I'm wrong or naive to that. But on the flip side, just being able to show your product, and one staffer certainly pointed out to if you have a good team, you want to play, and maybe if it's going to be a tough year, you kind of wish we didn't play. So there was one staffer that didn't think it was a big deal and thought that it was all blown out of proportion. And cited the fact that, hey, you never know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to play. What if you got a tight end committed and then you have a freshman tight end emerge, and that tight end thought he was going to come in and emerge as a true freshman. So I am of the belief that playing is much better than not playing, but that was another man's opinion.
Do you think it directly affected anybody in Ohio State's class of 2021?
No, I think that this is a class that has a tight bond. I don't think anyone I think everyone in this class is excited to be a Buckeye, and I don't think anyone thinks that this is affecting them in their Ohio State career. You know, it's affecting them in maybe their senior years, but I think everyone is under the assumption that next year we'll have some normalcy again with college football, and so with Ohio State in particular. I mean, it's still a program that's a NFL draft factory, and it's still the program that's the perennial favorite in the Big Ten, which means you're, you know, in that small conversation of teams that always have a shot to make the college football playoff. And you know, I think like you take a guy like Travion Henderson, he's still never been to Ohio State. I know they're trying to organize a shindig at Jack Sawyer's house. Hell, maybe it even already happened. I kind of lost track of it, but he's never even been to campus, but is still, you know, in regular communication with Tony Alford and Ryan Day and the staff. And I talked to Donovan Jackson yesterday. Tuesday, he got his All-America Bowl jersey presented to him. And the regular conversation he has with Coach Day and Coach Stud, it just really impresses me how much time Coach Day puts into recruiting and building genuine relationships with their recruits. And that carries over to in the locker room, I'm sure. It's not like I'm talking to the players every day that talk about how they get to chit chat with Ryan Day all the time, but it's obviously a culture that people want to be part of. Recruits are pointing to players opting back into play and how important it is to play that last season with Ohio State before they move on to the next chapter of their football career. And it's not the genuine feel within the Ohio State program is not something you see everywhere in college football. And y'all know that, but I mean, it is a different culture at Ohio State. It's one of the best cultures in college football. And that's why Ohio State's successful year in and year out is the culture. Certainly there's a ton of talent. But we've seen teams with a ton of talent not win, 12 games annually because it just doesn't come together on Saturdays as seamlessly as it does at Ohio State. And it takes a lot of hard work to have a good culture. But the players are obviously bought in, and this next wave of recruits is also bought in.
The idea that Wyatt Davis and Sean Wade came back, I think, is going to help recruiting many years into the future. We're going to take a quick break, come back and talk about a little future recruiting. Okay, we are back. Steve, you are loath to get ahead of yourself, but it's time to talk a little bit about the class of 2022. Give everybody 3 names just to watch that we're going to be talking about routinely here as that cycle kicks into gear.
Well, I go to the Bucknuts target list that Bill Curlett keeps nice and organized. And there's a lot of names, man. It's tough to list it to 3, as I think that Ohio State's going to, be a player for a lot of guys as they, as Ohio State already sits at number 2 in the class rankings with 6 commits in that class. So they're off and running. I think Will Johnson, the number 1 prospect in Michigan, 5-star cornerback out of Grosse Pointe South. He's a guy that Ohio State's near the top of the list for. He's obviously a Michigan legacy, but Ohio State's a program that when he put out his top schools last week was first out of his mouth, a place he wants to go visit. The number 1 receiver in the top 247 is Caleb Burton out of Del Valle, Texas. That's shaping up to be an Ohio State-Oklahoma battle from my vantage point for Caleb Burton. I think Keon Saab is the number 1 ranked athlete out of Williamstown, New Jersey, 5-star recruit. I know he has great interest in Ohio State. You got the offensive linemen, Gunnar Givens and Zach Rice. They may be a package deal, both out of the state of Virginia, 5-star prospects, the number 1 and number 2 offensive tackles, respectively, in the 24/7 Sports composite. Sean Murphy is the number 1 inside linebacker in the 24/7 Sports composite out of Manassas, Virginia. Is a guy that has mentioned in the past that Ohio State's one of the programs recruiting him the hardest. So we didn't get past the 5 stars there, Dan. That was nothing but 5 stars, and Ohio State's in the middle of it for a lot of them.
He covers recruiting. He often brings good news for Ohio State, and we enjoy that. Have a good one, Bucknutters.
Take care, y'all. See you on the front row.